Now that we've already seen that addition and subtraction, we are going to look at multiplying and dividing these rational numbers, the fractions. And I'm going to look at kind of separating with the multiplication because there are different ways to approach problems. So we're going to start with a whole number times a rational. So a whole number is anything 0 through infinity, no decimals, no fractions, anything like that. So let's just start with the problem. 3 would be a whole number, and the rational number would be 3/4. Now remember, multiplication is repeated addition. So this is another way of writing the same problem is 3/4 added together 3 times. Now we know how to add fractions. These all have the same denominator, so I can add the numerators. That would give me 9/4. We also know how to convert this into a mixed number, and I am going to convert it into a mixed number, so I can talk about mixed numbers here in a second. I can think about the multiples of 4 that can get me as close as possible to 9. So 9 I can write as that 8 times 1 because 8's that multiple of 4 that's closest to 9. Remember, 9 is the same thing as 8 plus 1. So that gives me 8/4 plus 1/4, or 2 1/4 for my answer. All right, now let's look at a rational times a rational. So let's do 1/2 times 3/5. Now, the nice thing about multiplying and also for dividing is you do not have to have a common denominator. We're not combining them together like we were with the addition and subtraction. So you actually just multiply across the top and you multiply across the bottom. So our answer is 3/10. Now, once we introduce this, a lot of times people think when we should add, that we should add across the bottom. So I'm just going to point out again over here. My denominator was 4 and it stayed 4. I did not add all the 4's together to get 12. So a different process for multiplying and adding fractions. And let me kind of show you why that is. I'm going to draw a little picture here. This 1/2 times 3/4, another way of saying it is half of 3/5. So let me draw a picture of this 3/5. Remember, I want my area models to be equal, so I need to adjust that. And then I'm going to shade in 3, so that gives me 3/5. Now I want half of it, so I can imagine cutting this in half. So I really only want, you can choose the bottom or the top, I really only want this part down here. I want half of what was originally shaded in black. Counting the squares, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 3 of them are shaded, so 3/10. So that's kind of a visual of what happens with multiplying, and that's not the visual that we had for addition, so to kind of help explain why. If I were to write it up as a rule, we don't have to have common denominators. We saw a similar setup, but I just go multiply across the numerators and multiply across the denominators. The same is going to be true when we have mixed numbers, but just be careful with mixed numbers. There is a common mistake that people make, so I just want to address that. I'm going to do 2.5 times 2.5. So a lot of times people just want to multiply the whole number part, so 2 times 2 and get 4, and multiply the rational part and get the 1/2 times 1/2 and get 1/4. And so they would think the answer is 4 1/4, and that is not the answer. So before you start multiplying, we need to change this to an improper fraction. So remember our steps that we want to do that. We're going to multiply 2 times 2 and get 4, and then add the 1/2. So I get 5/2. So I can think about this being 5/2 times 5/2, which is 25/4. Again, I'm going to do that practice where we're going to rewrite it as a mixed number. I can think about what I need to write 25 as, a sum of two numbers. I want to use a number that is a multiple of 4 and as close as I can get to 25. So that's going to be 24. So that's going to give me 24 plus 1. 24 plus 1 is 25, just another way to write it. So I get 6 1/4 as my answer. I just want to take a second and kind of show you why that is. I know it's another problem down here, but I'll just write it down below so you can see why I have to do that. I'll erase it. So I told you before, a lot of times people just like to multiply the whole numbers and then just the rational numbers. If you do that, the reason it doesn't work is you miss out some of the terms. Technically, 2 1/2 is 2 plus 1/2. You can kind of see that idea of those two fractions added with that mixed number in our last step. If we think about our FOIL that we know, the first 2 times 2 gives me 4. 2 times 1/2 gives me 1 for the outer. The inner is 1/2 times 2, and the last is 1/2 times 1/2. So if you don't change it to a mixed number, you basically miss the inner and the outer part of FOIL. So you miss those 2 in the middle. So you only get 4 1/4 instead of 6 1/4. So that's the reason why we have to switch it to a mixed number and can't just do the way that a lot of people think about it.